Here we go, going live.
Hey, Mr.
The music.
Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Pond Boss Magazine. Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, checking in from the really warm. Look at there. There's Glenn May, BassResource.com. You referenced him. You've sent me some articles that I wrote that you found on his website. There's Kania, Jason Nepstead checking in too. Glad to see you guys. Welcome to this Wednesday, August the 7th, 2019. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's pretty hot here. I hope Dave Weber comes on because I know it's hot where he is. There's supposed to be like 105, 106. There's Ann Kania, Kelly Duffy's with Helen Chemical. He is one of our go-to guys about all things aquatic plants and herbicides, fertilizers, water quality, water chemistry. There's Brad Rom. Look at there. Holy cow, people are showing. Clark Cole from Weatherford, Texas. Chuck Brinkman checking in from the middle of Missouri. Dan Garallop. Hello, Dan. Man, have I got a treat for you guys today. We've got a fun show. You guys are going to learn some things, and I'm going to learn some things. I'm so excited about it, I can't stand it. There's Frank James checking in from Shreveport. Man, we drove not too far from you today. We were in El Dorado, Arkansas. We'll tell you all about that, which is about, I don't know, an hour or so north of Shreveport. Mike Rivers is checking in as well. Connie Bingham, and that's probably Fred checking in from Brownstown, Illinois. We love them. They're Pond Boss friends from way, way back.
Northern Water, yeah.
Yes, they're right there on the cusp of that. And you know what's really cool about Fred and Connie is they bought the family place that Fred watched his grandfather and father build the pond.
Wow.
And now he owns it, you know. And I know he's going to be interested in what you have to say today. There's Mike Cottrell. He's doing taxidermy and he's listening to us tonight. That's cool. Lisa Taylor. Let's see here. Amber Young. Hey, Amber Young. How you doing, girl? She grew up with my kids. Good to see her. Let's see what Lisa Taylor said. Hey, Pond Boss from the Mitten. I love that. Let's see who else we got. I want to be sure I don't miss anybody. Chad Gillespie checking in from Pontotoc, Mississippi. Man, we got some folks checking in, Bruce. Hey, I got a really, really cool cool show. I'm gonna take a sip. I got a really cool show lined up. That'll help clear my tongue.
There you go.
You know, we covered Bruce and I the last couple of days. Bruce Kania from Shepherd, Montana. He's the CEO and founder of Floating Island International. And as you'll see in just a few minutes, his passion is all things water, lakes, and ponds, and the byproducts of what he does, which is growing lots and lots and lots of fish. And he's got some really, really cool concepts, ideas, and practical knowledge that he's done that he's going to share with you guys tonight. And I don't think it'll be real hard to dig it out of him. So we're going to do that. And there's Morgan Tyler. Morgan works with Purina Mills, so love to have him here. Lisa Taylor likes the red Solo Cup. You got one, I got one.
Yes.
Here, let's have a good show, buddy.
There you go.
Here's to a good show, red Solo Cup. There's Chris Chavetta. He's looking in from Missouri. He's at Innsbruck. Man, they've got literally hundreds of ponds at Innsbruck. And Chris, what you're getting ready to hear, man, save this, listen in, because there's some pretty cool things going on. There's Gene Wood. Our kids grew up together too. Hi, Gene. Good to see you. So here's the deal. You guys, people that watch this show, you know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like and share this video to your timeline right now so we can keep building an audience and get the views up. Because what people are going to hear tonight, I promise you, has great value. $35 a year, speaking of great value, Pond Boss Magazine. And if you will do those three things, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments, click like and share to your timeline, you're eligible for a drawing, or a drum roll please, a Pond Boss hat. Look at that. It's real, it's good, and you want one. And then we got these Pond Boss mugs right here that know how to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. And I don't know how it knows how to do that, but by golly, it works pretty good. There's Jaden Roberts. Hey, Jaden, I am so glad you are here. Your timing's perfect, dude. Guess who the winner is of the drawing? Look here. Found it on my desk. Read that. Jaden Roberts from Grand Island, Nebraska. Jaden, you got a hat coming and a mug coming at you, buddy. Glad to see you. Rudy Billings. Speaking of Billings, Shepherd is just east of Billings, Montana. So Rudy says, howdy, Bob. What can I do about water temperatures near 89 in my 8th acre, 14-foot deep pond? Nothing. Man, we were in the dog days. There's not much you can do about it. Now, what you can do, if you want to aerate, you can, but really, really be careful. Because if you're going to aerate this time of year, you're going to create autonomous temperatures from top to bottom from where your diffusers are, if you choose to use diffusers. But here's what I'm going to tell you to do. Check your temperature top to bottom. If it's 89 at the top and you go down 4 feet and it's 85, and you go down 2 more feet and it's 82, you're fine. Because you expect to have hot temperatures this time of the year. Let's see here. So there's Ed Brewer from South Carolina. I guess it was Monday, you picked me up here. We flew into Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, came and snagged me, got me about, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we drove over and spent the night in Texarkana. Then we ended up yesterday morning in El Dorado, Arkansas. Went to El Dorado Chemical. And El Dorado Chemical had communicated with Bruce and asked what he could help them do to help them get their ammonia levels and 2 or 3 different they produce fertilizers and industrial gases at El Dorado Chemical, and they get some little bitty, like when a truck fills up with granular anhydrous ammonia, there might be 3 pounds that fall on the ground. Well, if they don't pick that up and it rains, it washes it into a stream that washes it into the lake. So being good stewards of the community, and they've got about a 60-acre lake, they want to see what they can do to reduce the nutrient load in their lake. So they found Bruce, and Bruce is coming up with an invention, creating some islands that can circulate water, and is going to propose to them that they use those to make their water better. So, Bruce, let's cover some ground. I mean, we covered a lot of ground the last few days. He and I spent 5 hours talking to each other each way over to El Dorado, Arkansas and back, and then made a presentation while we were there and giving them some ideas on what can be done to make their lake better. And as we were talking, I thought, man, this is going to be some meat that you guys are going to want to hear. I see Barrett LaCroix from Bells. Brian Lawrence is checking in. So, Bruce pounded a couple of concepts into their minds and brought them out in my mind. And those 2 things, if you want to make your water better, what are 2 things they need to think about?
Bob, you're leading me right to the beginning, the very beginning. Surface area and circulation. When you bring those together in your waterway, you're going to get about 25 additional benefits. You're ultimately going to resurrect nature's food web. You may already have an active food web. You may have something you think is really effective and really good, but my promise to you is that it can be better yet. And what we're finding in some of our, we got some 9,000 islands now in the water around the world. So what I'm talking about is, while admittedly every waterway is unique, there are patterns, and ultimately you can take advantage of nature's wetland effect to make your waterway super productive. That means that you can cycle the nutrients that are today probably causing problems in your waterway. You can turn them into something a lot better than a problem. You can turn them into fish. Your growth rates can go off the chart. It is amazing, but the reason we've learned this and where we are, where we're coming from, is because we're located in Montana, very near the Center for Biofilm Engineering in Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana. And what we've learned there over the course of some 15 or 18 years now is that when we specifically biomimic nature's wetland effect, wonderful things happen for water quality, wonderful things happen around fish productivity. It truly is amazing, and I want to say this unequivocally. What we're talking about is science-based. Unequivocally. There's no maybe about it.
Okay, so here's how this impacts you. So let's say you've got a 3-acre pond. You feed your fish. Maybe you fertilize, maybe you don't. Over a span of time, you're going to have a nutrient buildup. When those nutrients build up, they're typically going to make their way down below the thermocline and sequester themselves in the mud or in the water beneath the thermocline, where it's going to become anoxic. So you got fish waste, you've got uneaten feed, you've got decaying plants, you've got phytoplankton blooms that crash and die during their normal course of life, by the way. And so when Bruce says surface area, the vehicle that processes these different organic wastes and natural occurrences are microbes. And it usually starts off with like if you look at do you have American pondweed? Raise your hand. Oh, look at that.
It's off the chart.
If you'll pick up a leaf of your American pondweed, look under it, there's a real slimy little film on that. That's called biofilm. And to that biofilm attaches bacterial colonies that become what we call periphyton. So the more surface area that periphyton can cling to and form on, the more it's going to work for you to process those byproducts of having a pond. When there's no habitat, no structure, you got a cereal bowl, your waste and your byproducts are going to accumulate. And if they accumulate at the bottom and you get a rain right now, you're going to be flushing your best water out. And the water that's beneath your thermocline isn't going to benefit from that. So what Bruce is saying when he says more surface area, if you've got more surface area vertically in the water column where biofilm can build and where periphyton can grow and these bacterial colonies can do their work, the faster they're going to process these nutrients and then make them available in the form of plankton, in the form of diatoms, in the form of different kinds of algae. They're going to feed small bugs. They're going to feed the Daphnia. That's going to create the food chain. So what Bruce is saying is what he wants to talk about tonight, and I'm right there with him, is if you can increase the surface area through different kinds of media, and Bruce does it with floating islands, and I'll let him tell you about that here in just a second. But if you can increase spots underwater vertically, rock piles, brush piles, plastic, and I mean, good gosh, I wish Todd Watts was watching this. This guy bought Dollar General out of every plastic flour and milk carton that they had, these milk crates, and that guy's got more plastic underwater, and that media love is perfect to attract periphyton to grow. And so the more surface area you've got under the water, the better that your pond is going to be able to regenerate and put those nutrients to work instead of them building up. I got a call from a lady a couple of weeks ago that was having a fish kill because she had a blue-green algae die off. Well, if she'd had more surface area for nature to do what it does, she wouldn't be calling me with blue-green algae. So let's talk a little bit more about how you see surface area. There's surface area, and what was the other one?
Circulation.
Okay, so the water's got to be able to move around the surface area.
Yeah, in fact, here's a measured data point, but literally you will experience 4.5 times more nutrient cycling when you combine surface area with circulation than you get with either one by themselves. Now, there's many variables in there, but bottom line is that the deadheads, the branches, the brush. I'll tell you a short story. A few years back, I had been introduced to the concept of what's called brush park aquaculture.
I was in Sri Lanka, by the way.
Yeah, I traveled to the other side of the planet where these native folks, people who lived there for thousands of years, have been practicing this process of surface area and circulation. It's called brush park aquaculture. And they do it with a natural material, brush. They age it, it's deciduous, it's not pine trees.
Hardwood trees.
Yeah, and here's the numbers, folks. They're averaging in a closed system where you don't necessarily you're not pulling fish in from elsewhere. You can actually quantify, you can count what you're doing. In a closed system, they're averaging some 2,500 pounds of fish per acre foot of water. You do the math on that and you compare to what you're doing. And you'll see what I'm talking about, why I am so excited about bringing this to North America. And by the way, we're doing it in Montana, a place called Fish Fry Lake. Today, Fish Fry Lake is, without a doubt, the most productive fishery in the state of Montana. And, you know, I do inject nutrients into Fish Fry Lake indirectly because we're on the end of a irrigation ditch. And with what are called non-point nutrients connected with farming, connected with fertilizer from upstream, end up coming into Fish Fry Lake from the ditch. So I get them for free. And what we're doing is, here's the other point. If I don't do this, this is the important point. If I don't do this, then literally the lake will experience a massive algae bloom, or it'll get weed growth top to bottom. Literally. You've got to do something, and if you do, you get rewarded.
And the reward is being able to cycle these nutrients into a form that the pond can use. And really, I got to pat Bruce on the back, so to speak, because of the work he's doing right now. It's really a little bit ahead of its time, but the time is catching up. You know, so, and I'm glad to see Bruce Condello. Bruce indirectly does some of what you're talking about. He's increased surface area in his lake there. He's got a circulator right off of his dock, and his main mission was to move as much water as he can. And his dock by itself just increases surface area.
It does.
Yes. And there's Bear Brundrett. Bear's got a pond that's, gosh, Bear, I guess your pond is now maybe 3 years old. You know, and your pond's probably not quite there yet because it takes a while to accumulate all these different nutrients, and of course, but you know what? You're right beside a horse ranch. You might be getting a little bit more input than I might know. There's Leanne checking in. She's our Pond Boss Advertising Director. Todd Austin. Ann Kania's throwing out a, you know Ann Kania? Like y'all are kind of married, sort of?
Nah.
Yeah. Todd Austin. And Bruce, thanks for the compliment, man. So, I think what's going on in today's market, every one of you out there have heard about aeration. And you know, aeration didn't show up in our pond management industry, our pond management world, until probably the late 1990s. I can remember it. It crossed over from wastewater treatment. And then it got real competitive. It was really fun. I remember at several of the Pond Boss conferences, I'd have 5 different representatives from 5 different aeration companies, and they're all competitors, and I've got them on a panel discussion, and you can hear them, you know, kind of jockeying for position. But what they will all agree on is every one of them are there to move the water. You know, and depending on what your missions are with your ponds, bottom diffused aeration is a great way to move water vertically. Circulators like what Bruce has, looks like a little miniature fountain that blows water up 2 feet, is lifting water up and blowing it not only vertically but spreading it horizontally as well. There's other circulators like what Casco sells that were designed to be de-icers for the northern ponds, northern waters, to move water laterally so docks don't freeze up. Well, you can buy those things and set them at the angle you want. You can push water at a 45-degree angle down, or you can push water at a 45-degree angle up. You know, but what Bruce is saying, and what Bruce's spin is, and what his research is on, is how he can take these floating islands that could be anywhere from 8 inches to 20 plus inches thick, plant plants on them, then use solar powered water pumps, or if you have power, up to a 3 horsepower water pump where you can simulate a native stream by picking water up under your thermocline, blowing it across one of his inventions that could be a cobblestone creek floating in the middle of your pond. Now, they're not cheap, but what they do, the benefits far, far outweigh the long-term cost. You know, even though you're going to spend some money up front, you know, what it does to prevent that 15 minutes of infamous death loss that you have the risk of at some point. And it all boils down to picking the water up, moving it, it exposes to the atmosphere, circulates, and it also pushes water through these different expansions, the different habitat. What's the word you were using? Come on. Circulation and...
Surface area.
Surface area. Surface area. So the more you can push water through the surface area, the more that the bacteria can do to process those wastes.
Well, Bob, that reminds me of 2 other stories, right? Dr. Wes Neal at Mississippi State University.
You wrote about this in Pond Boss.
Right.
Yep.
He took one of those floating stream beds that you're describing that uses an airlift system, by the way. We're not moving water, we're moving air.
And the air picks up the water.
Much more efficient, about 6 times more effective than pumping.
Yep.
But we put a floating stream bed in a pond. We have another control pond. They're both being treated the same way, same kind of feed. Everything else is identical. But the pond with the floating stream bed produces 19% more fish biomass. 19%.
And you know what? That's
pushing 20%.
And that's empirical. That is replicated, comparative, controlled study that Wes Neal did, and he wrote about it in Pond Boss.
And there's more in that. The second story. I mean, think about your pond. How deep is it? What is your deep spot in that pond? Do you ever experience stratification, a thermocline, and then other cooler water below it? Typically, if you're nutrient rich, that water down below isn't going to be usable by the fish. But guess what? That water down below has the same volume of solubilized nutrients in it as the water up above, but over and above that, it has all the TSS, the suspended solids, concentrate in that water. So it's got a greater fraction of what you need to grow fish in it. And right now, it's dead water.
And it's
your pond. Might be a third, it might be a fourth, or it might be a half of your entire pond's water isn't doing anything.
Pond Boss Magazine, $35 a year. Let me tell you what's getting ready to happen. Bruce and I were talking today, and he's about, 85% sure he's going to write a series of articles that's explaining in greater depth what we're talking about today. So if you haven't subscribed to Pond Boss, you need to do that pretty quick. You can go to pondboss.com and subscribe that way through the store, or you can call the office at 800-687-6075 and join up that way. But what Bruce is going to do, and you know what, Bruce, along the lines we were talking today, with the emphasis being circulation and surface area, and folks are hearing tonight, what that does is it creates more substrate for beneficial microbes to build up on. And I hope Landon Wyatt's watching this. Landon Wyatt is with Natural Lakes Biosciences, and he is making a living off of helping people develop enzymes and special mixes of microbes to help process some of these wastes as well, to expedite the process. So, Bruce, what I'd like for you to go through now, there's Bev Root checking in from Billbig. Hi, Bev. Good to see you there. Billy Bates has checked in there. Be sure, click like, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine, share this to your timeline. Let's see, Corey Richmond. I manage Mirror Lake at Ohio State University for Aqueduct. They planted dozens of different macrophytes, airhead, pickleweed, etc. after they built a new clay-lined basin. Then they used nutrient-rich topsoil and compost to plant upland species. Let's see what else he says here. This looks like it's going to be pretty good, Bruce, because it's going to segue right into what we were getting ready to talk about. Okay, upland species like coneflower and milkweed. Very cool. Unfortunately, they do not like the 70-80% filamentous algae they experience in late spring or early summer. After using copper-based algicides mixed with biocatalyst every 2 weeks for 6 weeks straight, then adding beneficial bacteria in the weeks in between the pond is now completely clear of algae. The amount of Daphnia, water boatman, and dragon damselfly larvae is incredible. The biofilm on the macrophytes resembles bryozoans. It's so thick. By the way, the pond is an average of 3 feet deep, has 8 bottom diffused aerators. They're also adding 2.5 horsepower surface aerators. It's just 0.6 acres. Sorry for the book, but you guys are hitting the nail on the head talking about surface area for beneficial microbes. Hashtag Landon Wyatt. Oh, I know Landon. I called him, and I hope he's watching.
Well, Bob, let me comment on that.
Hit it. Let's go. Cover it up.
Right away, the pond that's being described here has a high ratio of surface area because it's relatively shallow. That's a terrific advantage. Now, let me just push a button here. You take a waterway like that, and you decide to stay low in the trophic level, which means going to grow something that can eat whatever you grow first, the biofilm or whatever.
Okay, let's explain that so that everybody can hear it. So in other words, when you increase the surface area and you increase the biofilm and increase the periphyte, you're increasing the bacterial colonies that are processing wastes from the water and turning them into something that, like what he's talking about, is going to feed the Daphnia, the water boatman, etc. So now we've gone from the circulation and the what do you call it?
Surface area.
Surface area. Just making sure you're on your toes out there, people. And creating the environment with enough surface area that these things can grow. Then what's the next thing that happens?
Yeah. Right now, essentially, you've established what I would describe, even though I know there's other variables, I would describe it as the base of the food web. Then, if you can design for a system, a food web, where you've got something like a forage fish that grazes the periphyton within one transition, one cycle, you're staying low in the trophic level. And every time you move through a trophic level, 90% of your energy stays behind. So if you stay low in the trophic level, guess what happens? You get massive production compared to trying to target some other, the other stuff happens later. But for right now, if you focus on staying low in the trophic level, focus on growing, for example, a forage fish that can graze periphyton directly, we're starting to get into the difference between the north and the south.
Yeah, we're going to have a civil war about ponds here.
But anyway,
we'll keep it real simple.
Sure. The bottom line here is that we're finding, for example, in a small test pond at Shepherd, that we can grow some what translates to about 900 to 1,000 pounds of fathead minnows and crawfish to boot in an acre foot of water. That translates in turn to we're approaching 4+ pounds of phosphorus that we're cycling out of the water. And that phosphorus, if it's not going to grow minnows, guess what it grows? It grows harmful algae blooms.
That's right.
It grows plants, and you can imagine that 1 pound of phosphorus, 1,100 pounds of filamentous algae.
See, listen to that. Say that again.
1 pound of phosphorus, 1,100 pounds of filamentous algae. But again, there's all kinds of variables out there. There's different kinds of filamentous algae, and I'm sure each one's a little bit different number, but that's a pattern.
But that's still it, and that drives the point home. And it's really funny because when I start talking to guys from the north, like Bruce, and he says, you fertilize your ponds, you put phosphorus in your ponds, I'm busy trying to take it out. Well, that's because they have more of it than we do. It's a limiting factor in the south, but it's an abundant problem in the north. So to continue to make sure that you guys really hear what we're saying is, if you can create the habitat and the environment for these beneficial microbes to cling and grow, they're going to process these nutrients, convert them into something that is going to get eaten by something beneficial.
But Bob, we got to stop there because we missed something.
Hear it.
What is it about microbes? Why do they require surface area and circulation? Phytoplankton doesn't. It simply requires sunlight.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
These beneficial microbes, they don't need sunlight. They don't. All they need is a place to make home, to sit on. When they have that surface area and then you move nutrients by them, they're better at cycling nutrients out of the water than phytoplankton. They beat the algae.
Yep, and what they do when the bacterial colonies consume it, their byproduct is a direct food, where phytoplankton are not efficient. 1,100 pounds of phytoplankton for 1 pound of phosphorus is basically what that means. Filamentous algae, phytoplankton, whatever it is, anything green that's algae-like.
Yeah, your pondweed or
yes.
whatever, Eurasian milfoil.
Oh, that's the word. There's Ed Spinopoulos. Ed's a pond manager up in the North Country. He's around the Great Lakes, so maybe he'll chime in a minute. Chris Blood from Texas Hunter Feeders. While Chris is here, Chris, I'm glad you're here, man. We appreciate Texas Hunter's sponsorship. Helps with this show. Same with Purina Mills and today Floating Island International. What's your website?
FloatingIslandInternational.com. And
Check
the
it out.
reason we don't say Floating Islands International is because we got a long website name to begin with.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Frank James says, I have 4 of the artificial floating islands all close to the dock. Young of the year fish love to hide under them very close to copper-nosed bluegill spawning beds. However, now there are plenty of American pondweed and pond grass, bushy pondweed, maybe Nightella, he's not sure, available for the little guys also. My question is this: if we set up an artificial stream using pumped pond water that falls back into the lake, would that be an even better location for the islands due to circulation?
When you leverage your existing islands by providing them with circulation, that 4.5 multiplier factor comes back into play. So you can take the islands that you've already invested in, and thank you for that, and you can actually make them 4.5 times more effective at cycling nutrients. So
if you run water through them or around them.
Essentially, I'll get technical and I'll say islands are biofilm reactors. That's really what they do. Biofilm is microbes and their residue, and these islands optimize for that. Again, this is science-based. This is the Center for Biofilm Engineering teaching us what we can do with water, how to leverage that phenomenon, which is these beneficial microbes and their amazing ability to cycle nutrients into biofilm, which is the base material for periphyton, which launches the food web in northern waters. By the way, northern waters, how are they different than the south? One of the key factors,
here we go.
The key factors is that we don't have the repertoire of filter feeders that you have in the south. So when we grow green algae, it's really hard to use it up. We've got some invertebrates that can work with it. We've got a few fish that might graze it, but hardly any, not like you. We probably have 1/3 or 1/4 of what you have. So when we try and fertilize our water, we quickly get into trouble.
You get a bad bloom, you get an algae bloom.
And then it dies and uses up dissolved oxygen, and we're in that downward spiral.
Yep, and then if you have blue-green algae, they're breaking loose and killing things, like what Corey Richmond has to deal with sometimes up there.
Yeah,
well,
actually.
you know what? Becky Maxwell wants me to give Debbie a hug from her. I have a smoking hot wife, happy to give her a hug from you. Dan Drollop, does the island need to come out when the water freezes? You live in Montana, does it get cold there?
Yeah, in fact, today's islands, and in fact, from day one, our islands have been ice friendly, ice capable. They don't have to be pulled out. They stay in the water. Ice can freeze into and through them. They're made of essentially a matrix that allows for them to freeze up and freeze into the water. But I'll also mention along the way here that today's islands have been developed around a 60-year design life. And over and above that, we're biomimicking how nature does it. We've studied how these naturally occurring peat-based islands that occur in the northern part of the Midwest, particularly, my home state of Wisconsin, for example, Chippewa Flowage, there's an island there, a 30-acre island that we dove under, we dive under, and if you snorkel around the perimeter of that, you'll see that this island is essentially a fish magnet. It is just buzzing with the fry of game fish, with other forage fish that are living within the matrix of roots that occur and extend out from these islands. And by the way, this Chippewa Flowage, home to the world record muskie. The muskies eat northern pike. I'll just mention that. But ultimately, the idea of a 69 pounds, 15-ounce muskie coming off of Chippewa Flowage is not surprising when you see what they've got to eat.
Wait, did you say 69 pounds, 15 ounces?
I did.
Dude, in Texas, that's 70 pounds, guys. You guys can't tell that he's passionate about this, can you? I mean, he's all in. Both feet, all fingers. He truly is, and I love listening to him. Corey Richmond says, "Awesome, thanks for addressing my situation. Do you think this algae will occur at this level every spring?" By the way, I hashtag Landon because I was using SummerSlam and Ponzilla from Natural Lake. Actually, Corey, I called Landon yesterday to tell him Bruce was going to be on, and gave him a heads up that we were going to be doing this. I did the same thing with the fish professor, Mark Cornwell, up in upstate New York. So I'm hoping those guys are watching. They're probably afraid to let me know because I'll call them out, like I'm calling Chris Ketchum. Chris is checking in. Chris, we got some pretty detailed pond chemistry going on here, and it's really cool. So now, and I want to circle back in a minute to North Ponds versus South Ponds, Southern Ponds, and then, the Midwest is kind of a blend of both with a lot of the characteristics of those in the North and those that, like what Bruce goes through in Nebraska. He's got to deal with situations that Northern Ponds have, and he also has some of the same opportunities as Southern Ponds has. So he's got to figure that out, and he's done a pretty good job of that. Matter of fact, he's growing some huge fish. Where I wanted to go is we're talking about surface area, water circulation, to give, and you know what? Let me tell you what biofilm is, periphyton is. This time of year in southern waters, you'll see little blobs of things float to the top. They might be about as big around as a silver dollar or a dollar bill. When you see those and they've got a little bit of a brownish color, maybe slight greens, maybe even a little bit of black, that's periphyton. And that's periphyton that's probably a little algae heavy as well. It's photosynthesizing, and as it photosynthesizes, the little gas bubbles of oxygen cling and they break loose and they float up in the afternoon. But you can reach out there and touch it and it falls apart and sinks. That's periphyton. If you have a pile of rocks, if you have moss-back fish attractors, and you see the slick stuff growing on your mossbacks or growing on tree limbs, that's periphyton. And that's what we're talking about. So the more periphyton you can grow, the better direct participation in the food chain by microbes you get that feeds insects, that feeds small fish and bigger insects, and on and on and on. And what Bruce has been able to do, and when he started telling me these numbers, I thought he'd been drinking. Here's a toast. And he starts telling me these numbers of fish that he's producing in this 6.5 acre Montana lake. And each fall he has a kid fishing event just to harvest fish. And his number one goal, and I'm speaking for you, was to get phosphorus out of the water because it was coming in from farmers irrigating corn that's been fertilized in porous soils. So they have to over-fertilize. A lot of that fertilizer percolates through the soils into a gravel bed that flows through the ditches, and he's downstream. You stand in his front yard and you can see the Yellowstone River. Stunning beauty. So he's right there on the downstream side of a massive amount of irrigation going on. So he's getting a lot of phosphorus. So, if to keep from turning it into filamentous algae, he's covered himself up with his own floating islands. So we're going back to Corey's question, can these folks expect more filamentous algae? I'm going to give you my answer, then we're going to go with the real answer. Corey, if you can increase the surface area for periphyton to grow, you're going to decrease the odds of having filamentous algae. I love manufactured man-made wetlands. The problem is oftentimes it takes way, way, way more wetlands for macrophytes and even terrestrial plants to capture those nutrients than it does periphyton in the water. Is that a fair statement?
Fair statement.
Okay, so what would you tell Corey to do to decrease the risk of having filamentous algae again next year?
Well, think of it as an elephant. You've taken a few bites out of the elephant. Look at another way of saying what we're talking about. Everybody has biofilm. Everybody has, and biofilm is sticky. If it's up near the top of the surface where light happens, there'll be a green component to the periphyton. That'll be filamentous algae. It's been snagged by the sticky biofilm. As you go down a bit, you get into another form of phytoplankton called diatoms. They are low light capable. And by the way, a thing about diatoms that you need to know, they ultimately result in a steady state emission of oxygen. Whereas the green algae and the blue greens, they go through this feast or famine thing, and they can result in essentially such a surge of what's called BOD, biological oxygen demand, that you can use up the oxygen in your water when they are bloom dyes. Diatoms don't do that. They're more steady state. So you've got this safety valve. If you can design for diatom-based periphyton, which is the brownish reddish material that occurs on surface area a few feet down, and you can keep that circulation and surface area occurring throughout the depth of your pond, you can have an entire productive food web occurring top to bottom in your waterway.
Ron Arduin sent me a couple of photos. They're on my phone, or I can show you, where he had looked like some kind of an algae dive, and he had this floating red film on top of the water mixed with some periphyton that had died, as well as a little bit of green film that was probably cyanobacteria. And then he sent me a picture a few hours later, and all that red paint looking stuff, kind of reddish maroon rust color, had turned green. Could that have been diatoms?
It might have been dead ones.
Yeah,
you might have
what I mean.
run through a downward, a situation where the whole system went anoxic, without breathable oxygen, and died. They're heartrending. Those moments are heartrending.
Yeah.
And that's part of what drives me. When you see a system that's healthy and productive, it energizes you. When the opposite happens, the opposite takes place. I mean, when you're around water and you become a water steward, at least if you're like me, you fall in love with the process of seeing these healthy, wonderful things occur and the beauty that comes with it.
One of the cool things that I'm finally beginning to wrap my brain around is when you increase surface area and you increase circulation, you actually work to stabilize your water. And you decrease a lot of these spikes. Spikes of oxygen come closer. Spikes of pH come closer. So that's really our take-home points for you tonight, is to think about ways you can increase surface area for microbes, periphyton, biofilm to grow. There's Scott Hohensy checking in. He's a wildlife guy with Purina Mills. He's in here with us. Dick Tabbert, Jeffrey Soto. Hey guys, 12-inch copper-nosed bluegill rock. Hey dude, 12-inch any bluegill's rock. That's a 2-pound fish. Let's see here. I saw Gary Hempel. He says, I use BioSolutions 38 in my pond. Gary, I wish I could address that. I don't know what that is. My bad. I should know that, but I don't. Chris Blood. Hey, there's Jacob West. Jacob West is, he and his family are just finishing up, I don't know, a 12, 14 acre, 13 acre lake about 40 miles west of us. And he's coming to the Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology. By the way, let me tell you about that real quick. Chris Blood's going to tell me to promote myself, which I'm not real comfortable with that, but I'm going to do it. We're going to have back in 2004, I had an idea to invite people to our house because we've got a great venue to host people, and I wanted it to be the Pond Boss or Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology. Well, where we would come and you could spend 2, 3, 4 days, whatever, and get a lot of hands-on, get in-depth like the pros do, pond management stuff. And then our house burned down in 2005, so that didn't work out. Shortly after that, we decided to start doing the Pond Boss conferences. So we've done a number of those, and I'm ready to pick back up that idea that I had back in 2004. So now, in October 24, 25, 26, through there, whatever that week is, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to have the Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology, where we're going to have some good hands-on stuff. You're going to be an electrofishing boat, sampling tools. We're going to be doing water chemistry, lavage fish stomachs, weigh and measure. You'll handle more fish than you've ever seen in your life unless you're in the fisheries business, which, by the way, this is good for young fisheries biologists or fisheries biologists that want to see a good spin on the southern things that we do. And I'm going to bring in a few special guests. I'm still trying to coerce a couple of 3 of them that really need to come, and they just hadn't quite figured it out. And we're going to go to a really good venue as well and have a little bit of classroom time. You'll end up with a curriculum, and it's pretty expensive. It's $1,500, but it's worth it. You're going to get fed, hang out with us, and meet 12 to 15 people of like mind. I think we've got 8 people signed up for the fall one. I think we've got 6 people signed up for spring. Spring will be April 2, 3, 4, whatever that Thursday, Friday, Saturday is. Call the office or email me. You can email me at info@pondboss.com, and we'll send you a brochure and a registration form, and we want to get you signed up for that because it's really going to be fun. Let's see here. Chris Blood says, great information and knowledge on periphyton. Who knew? Tell me this. Who knew there'd be an exciting, fun program about periphyton? Well, here it is right here. You know what? And we will put this on YouTube here in the next couple of weeks where you can be able to find it and see it again. And plus, we're going to leave it up here on the Pond Boss Facebook page so you can find it and listen to it again tonight. Matter of fact, I know all of y'all are going to want to listen to it while you go to sleep tonight. Chris Yavetta, if surface area and circulation is good, can you use an island with a decorative fountain, or do flow rates across the surface need to be lower flow? There you go. That's one for you, Bruce.
You know, I would suggest that either of those approaches would work well. Although the flow through, not having to lift that heavy water, is more efficient. So I guess I would say that if you're okay with, there may be an aesthetic component to the fountain that you're targeting, and you're okay with the relative expense, and that would be a wonderful approach.
Chris,
well, go ahead.
Well, Chris is he's the guy that runs the fishing club at Innsbruck, which is west of St. Louis, about an hour. And they've got a 260-acre lake, 100-acre lake. He's told me over 100 ponds, acres and acres and acres of water.
Wow.
And I mean, they're blessed with abundance. So he's kind of having to figure out what to manage and how to manage it. And I'm going to tell you, for somebody that's not in the business, I don't know anybody that I've met that knows more about it than he and guys like Bruce Condello.
Neat.
So Chris is right on it.
Well, I want to interject something here so we don't miss it, and that is that there in the north, we talk again for a moment about northern waters. There's a powerhouse up there. It's the bluegill. And the problem is that, at least in my setting, it's really hard for me to generate predators that are big enough to keep up with the bluegills. Now, I could go tiger muskie, I could go northern pike, but I don't want to. I want to contain my fishery around, in this case, the bass, the black crappie, the red ear sunfish, the bluegill, the green bluegill, or the green sunfish, excuse me, and brim, and there's a few others in the mix. But ultimately, their mouths aren't quite big enough. Those bluegill get too big too quick, and they're so successful at reproduction in our setting when we do what we do. Right now, I'll have 10, 12-inch bass and cruising in their spawning beds, eating their full. I mean, imagine this. Imagine a 12-inch bass that's got such girth that when you fillet it, it feeds 2 adults.
Looks like me.
I'm
big fish.
These and they may, I may have a hybrid bass or something that just doesn't have a big enough mouth, but I did a stomach analysis on 14 bass the other day. I only keep bass that are less than 15 inches. I turn everything else back. It's a slot limit approach. I want my big spawners to keep going. I do the same with the black crappie and with the perch. Literally, think 2-pound perch, 17-inch crappie. And at this point, because we're cut bait feeding bluegill that we harvest.
So he catches bluegill, cuts them up, and feeds them to who?
Back into the black crappie and the yellow perch. I've got them conditioned to eat cut bait.
Okay, which is kind of what Bruce does.
Yeah.
Condello.
But
Bruce,
here's my point, is there's a conundrum going on here. We can grow massive volumes of bluegill, and we have to intervene as predator because I don't want to interject those other big, massive predators in my bass's mouths are inordinately small compared to what I'm seeing with Florida bass and with the bass that grow down here.
Okay, so here's the transition. So what I hear him saying is his bass don't grow as fast, their body condition's better, but here's the key component to what Bruce is talking about. He is willing to go through the efforts it takes to harvest fish. And of course, his goal has been, let's get as much phosphorus out to get ahead of what's coming in. So tell everybody some of the harvests that you've had. This is a 6.5 acre pond in Montana, north of the Mason-Dixon line. And you cull how many, what, and what do you do with the fish you take out?
For 3 years, we harvested between 6,000 and 8,000 panfish. That would be crappie, bluegill, red ear sunfish, all of those. A slot limit basis, everything under 5 inches we took out. We processed them into a dried fish product that, by the way, it ends up being terrific canine treats. They eat them, and there's no issue with the bones. They crunch up fine, and dogs just love them.
Okay.
They're paleo dogs.
So you're taking like the little bitty fish, like little bluegills like that, And what, are you laying on the screens and drying them?
I air dry them. I just take a big
okay.
fan and put them in a screen off area, and 24 hours later, they're dog chips.
Dog chips, okay. But you're taking yellow perch, you're taking bluegill, you're taking crappie, and you're taking bass. And a number of those fish you're actually eating.
A lot, yeah.
A lot.
That's part of our diet. Yeah.
So with his approach, and of course you got to understand, this is the guy that invented floating islands. So I bet you can walk across this 6.5 acre lake pretty much anywhere and not get wet.
No, I got the number. 5.5% of Fish Fry Lake is covered with prototype Biohaven floating islands.
Okay, maybe you can walk halfway and then you drown. So, okay, so
Or
then
you snorkel.
okay, but what else is this? You don't get all your surface area from floating islands. You get it from other things, such as what?
When we designed it, I grew up in in Wisconsin, and I guided northern Wisconsin, and the occasional reservoir that I fished that would have been flooded timber. I'll think of these settings that represent the best fishing you've ever had, and having that as a marker from which to design Fish Fry Lake. And then I had the wonderful opportunity to build my own lake, Fish Fry Lake, 6.5 acres, 28 feet deep. But the bottom line is I only introduced the black crappie. Everything else came in by accident, essentially.
Through the ditch, through the irrigation
water, and I can control
which
that.
comes out of the
pretty
Yellowstone
much.
River.
That's right.
Okay.
But ultimately, there's the occasional water event, and I don't
Meaning
have
rain,
all that. I mean, there's
snow melt.
Sure, all of that.
Okay.
Or a flooding of, some of these, flood irrigating, that kind of thing gets out of control, whatever.
How do you circulate your water? We're going to run out of time, and I got some more topics.
I've got groundwater perking into the lake to the tune of 65 gallons a minute.
How deep is that? Surface?
It comes in at about 14 or 15 feet below the surface.
Okay.
And then, but that groundwater doesn't have any aeration to speak of. It's devoid of dissolved oxygen.
Well, it's percolated through the cornfields, going into the cobble that's under the soil, and migrating downstream, floating through a kind of like a little creek or stream coming into your lake.
Right.
At almost like a spring, but it's not.
Right.
Do you do anything else to move it? That 28-foot deep water?
I have 2 floating stream beds positioned in the lake, and each of those with a 3-horsepower blower moves about 3,400 gallons of water per minute in direct flow. Indirect flow is 4 or 5 times that number, but direct flow. I mean, think of the water that's has to replace the water you're moving through. In direct flow, think of the water as being pushed by the other water moving it. So you get a lot of circulation when you're moving 3,400 gallons of water in direct flow per minute, and that cost me a couple $100 a month. In
electricity bills.
Correct.
And you get how many pounds of fish for that?
But we're harvesting 1,700 or 1,800 pounds of fish per year on that basis.
And let's face it, guys, we're not willing to harvest that many fish unless you have them and you don't have any choice. Of course, I mean, this is part of his living.
We're a research center.
Yeah, he's researching, he's figuring it out. There's Mark Finn, we call him Zep on the Pond Boss Forum. Gary Hempel, wastewater and waste treatment guy. That's it. Water and wastewater treatment. That's what he's doing. He is using advanced wastewater treatment techniques designed for pond management. Yeah. And write that down. That is your new catchphrase. And I already forgot what I said. Jeffrey Soto says, I am curious as to why we see aquatic insects swim up in 20 feet of water, come out of their larval skins, and fly away. I thought these kinds of insects would live only in shallow water. The aquatic insect larvae in deep water.
Sounds like something's going really well there. That
Yeah.
sounds like a well-designed system that's performing, and that you want that in a big way. You want to keep that happening. You want to help that continue.
What happens?
And I don't have all the variables that that are. I can't be sure why that's occurring, but it feels really good to me.
They're not coming up from that depth. What they are is they've grown up in their habitat. Now it's time for them to metamorphosize and go from the larval stage into the adult stage. So they may swim out in 20 feet deep water, but they're shallow. They'll come up, they'll cling, they'll climb out, cling, and then they'll turn into dragonflies, damselflies, whatever they are. So they're probably not living in 20 feet of water. They're living in habitat where there's plenty of surface area, water circulation.
Okay, I can. I've got an underwater viewing window at Shepherd. It's 11.
Of course
feet,
you do.
11 feet deep. And there were times I'd be sitting in that window and I'd watch dragonfly nymphs literally come onto the viewing window itself, which has its own coating of paraphyton and biofilm. You have to clean off occasionally if you want to see through it. But these guys are like dragons, and they're predators, extreme predators. And they would catch fathead minnows that are just as big as they were. Or other stuff. But this is 11, 12 feet deep. Here's the point though. There was a line of demarcation where there was enough air above, they're fine. Below that, zynoxic, and if they dive into that at all, if they move into that at all, they only stay there for a second or two and they come back up because they can't make a living there. And therein lies the message. If we can make this waterway by circulation around surface area, we can essentially set the stage for that diatom, that steady state base dissolved oxygen level. We can bump up and maintain dissolved oxygen level at depth. Make your pond fully productive instead of only partially productive.
Nothing else to say about that. Steve Alexander joined in, Private Water Fishing. Steve, if you didn't get to see this show, you really need to watch the whole thing, because what you do for a living, you need to hear what Bruce has got to say. He's right on it. Now it looks like we got, looks like we got Gary Hempel and Mildred Hempel. They're kind of flirting with each other or saying hello or something here. Willie Howe, my next door neighbor, says, "Hey boss, I see Drew Hay checking in. He's been on a bulldozer all day today up in Pennsylvania. I owe you a phone call. I've been traveling with Bruce the last few days. Drew, I'll ring your number." Bruce said those invertebrates can and will live in 20-foot depths if there's continuous oxygen production due to consistent sunlight penetration that comes from high-quality water. That's exactly right. And the reason I'm telling you they live in shallow water is I'm assuming that your water quality is not like that. I'm presuming that in most cases, most ponds, and you know what, we've got like 3 minutes left, so I do want to spend a couple of minutes on north versus southern ponds. I'm going to do 30 seconds on south ponds. Oh, his hand's up. Yes, Bruce?
I got to sneak in the northern side. Those 14 bass I talked about, I did the stomach analysis on, they were eating the primary food in them, crawfish. Number 2, yellow perch to 4 inches long. Those yellow perch can fit inside the relatively small mouth of my bass. The yellow perch and crawfish are my base for growing these really hefty, incredibly girthed bass. But anyway, your turn.
And that's northern ponds. Now, one thing early on in this broadcast, Bruce was talking about not having the filter feeders. Here in the south, we've got threadfin shad. We can even use paddlefish if we want to. We've got native mussels that filter their nutrients from the pond mud. You know, so we've actually got fish that can utilize what's growing in the water column microscopically, that he doesn't have that advantage. And you guys in the north don't have that advantage like we've got in the south. If you put threadfin shad in a lake anywhere north of, say, probably 60 miles north of me, south of Oklahoma City, odds are high that they're going to die in the winter time because they die at 42 degrees. You know, so, okay, Gary and Mildred are flirting. That's his bride. And they're flirting here while we're talking about paraphyting. Oh my gosh, you guys get a room and a glass of wine. I love this. This is so much fun. Everybody that watches this, they're so energetic and so passionate about what they do. And it's fun to be able to bring this kind of show to these folks. And to kind of start to summarize where we're going here, here's your take-home points from today. Increase surface area for bacteria to grow. Figure out a way to make your water move that's best for you. Buy a floating island. Check them out, floatingislandinternational.com. Visit with Bruce. He's very friendly. Now, he's pretty data and detail driven, which I love, and I'm a little bit more colloquial and country, so I'm going to figure out how to decipher what he's saying and tell you about it, and he'll tell you about it. If you can do those two things and move your water from depths up, you're going to help process more natural bio-waste, which is going to be converted into the things that feed what feeds your fish. And if you'll do those things, you're going to have happier water and happier pond. Wow, that was pretty good. Bruce, what's your closing comments?
You know, I want to say to everybody out there that these are good times. We're really advancing. We're learning. We're getting a handle on it. And the future is extremely hopeful.
You know, and really one of my take-home points the last couple of days of hanging out with Bruce is a lot of the problems that we see are really not. They're opportunities. And it's up to us to figure that out. And guys like us to convey that to you so you can figure out what you can do to make your ponds better. So, hey, listen, thanks for hanging out with us. $35 a year, Pond Boss Magazine. Check out the Institute of Higher Pondology by Bob Lusk. Hey, Chris Blood, I'm promoting myself. I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to get over that too. It's going to be really good. You guys check us out and subscribe to the magazine. And we will see you next Wednesday. Same time, same place. 6:30, 7:30. Adios.